My ram took me down the mountain towards the country of Pimpel. It was called Pimpel due to its many hills. I would have named it something less gross, but it wasn't my country. The mountain dwarves would not join me, for there was a feud between them and the hill dwarves. I didn't understand why, but they had hated each other for centuries, so I doubted I would change their minds. I found myself in the village of Popski. I thought they might be leery of me coming from the mountain dwarf camp, but surprisingly, they were rather welcoming. The hill dwarves took me to a tavern. Dwarves certainly love their drink. I talked to a few of the dwarves and brought up the subject of my project.
Yuri, a small hill boy dwarf, was playing behind his home. He was fighting invisible dragons with his sword when he heard something. Most children would have been scared, but Yuri was more curious than afraid, much to the detriment of his.
What is that?
Yuri went to investigate. He wasn't afraid. He had his trusty sword with him. It was good against dragons and giants. Granted, they were figments of his imagination. He ran towards the noise. Galina, Yuri's mother, was cooking dinner. She was pulling a roast out of the oven when she called for her son.
Yuri! Time for supper!
Galina was concerned when she heard no answer. Galina stepped outside and gasped to not find her son.
Oh God, what is he up to now?
Yuri followed the moans. He knew he was getting closer, for the moans were getting louder. Yuri was about to find the source of the moaning until he heard something else.
Yuri!
Yuri felt his eyes roll practically on their own. His mother was coming to ruin his fun.
Yuri!
However, he knew that if he didn't return, his mother would ground him and it would be longer before he could have his fun.
Yuri!
Yuri, very reluctantly, went to his mother. Michail, Yuri's father, was out cutting wood. He had to make his quota before the winter came. He was the village's #1 lumberjack, and he had to keep up his reputation. He was on his last tree of the day when he heard something. Michail stopped chopping with terror in his heart.
Oh God, the Hell Dwarf.
Michail dropped his axe and started running. His quota didn't seem to matter at the moment. Yuri ate his supper with tears in his eyes. Supper was roast beef, which was usually one of his favorites. But after his mother's talk, mostly her hand talking to his backside, he didn't much care for his meal. Galina glared at her son from across the table. Galina wolfed down her food as she continued her stern glare at her son.
This will teach you from wandering from home and telling tall tales.
Yuri gave his mother a pleading look.
But Mama...
Galina shot a glare at her son that felt like daggers being fired at him. Yuri silenced himself and went back to eating. Michail continued running.
Must check on the family.
Galina was cleaning the dishes when Michail ran into the house, surprising and scaring his wife.
Michail, what is wrong with you?
Michail looked at his wife, his eyes wide with terror.
Did you hear moaning today?
Galina stared at her husband in confusion and concern.
What?
Moaning woman. Did you hear it?
Galina shook her head.
No,
Galina gasped in shock as a realization came to her.
Oh my god, Yuri heard moaning.
Yuri was in bed with a full stomach, after Mother had made some guilt cake. But he was still curious about the moaning sound and why his father seemed so scared of it. Michail walked into his son's room.
How are you, my son?
Yuri shrugged.
I'm all right.
Michail nodded solemnly.
That's good, son.
Michail went to leave the room.
Good night.
Yuri reached for his father.
Father, wait. Why were you worried about the moaning?
Michail stopped in his tracks with a wince. He slowly turned round to face his son.
I guess there's no time better than the present.
Michail sat on Yuri's bed and gave his son a weak smile.
I have to tell you about Ansky Karluk.
Yuri gave his father a curious look.
Yes, the Hell Dwarf. Once, many moons ago.
Zietzky Karlik?
Michail nodded. Michail told the story, worried that Yuri would have nightmares. What he was unaware of is Yuri was interested. Maybe too interested.
There was a young dwarf named Boris Emberborn, the son of the blacksmith, Maxim Emberson. Who taught him blacksmithing? What are you making?
It's a horseshoe, father.
Maxim grabbed Boris's creation and inspected it. You call this a horseshoe, boy? This is a hunk of metal dung. Boris's anger grew.
It is a fine horseshoe. Your old eyes just can't recognize quality anymore.
Maxim glared at his son with fury. What did you say? Boris's anger had become fear as he realized what he had done.
Father, no, I...
The back of Maxim's hand caught Boris's face, sending him to the floor. Boris looked down at his son with fury and shook the hook down at his son with fury and shook. You will spend the rest of the day making horseshoes until you get it right. Maxim threw the horseshoe towards Boris, just barely missing his head. Maxim has taught Boris how to blacksmith, but he also taught him how to hate. Boris made his way to the chort forest. Boris had found a clearing. He checked to see if he was alone. When he could find no onlookers and no one in earshot, he plopped himself on the ground. And sobbed. Boris wasn't aware of how long he had been in the forest. But he knew it was getting dark.
Oh no, I must make my way home before my father beats me again.
Little did Boris know is that he had an audience in a sinister being. Boris had stopped running, for he found that he was quite lost.
I've made an error in judgment.
I would say so.
Boris looked around frantically to find the source of the voice.
Who said that? Who's there?
Over here.
Boris looked to find a glowing bug floating in front of his face. Upon a closer look, Boris found that he was not talking to a bug, but a fairy.
A fairy?
The little fairy nodded.
Yes, I am. My name is Lozhnaya. I heard you crying and...
Wasn't crying.
The fairy glared at Boris as Boris looked around, trying not to make eye contact.
Right, well, I heard you. I heard you and thought you could use some help.
Not to offend, but what can you do to help me, little fairy?
I could tell you,
The fairy smiled, deviously.
but I think it would be better if I show you.
The fairy led Boris through the dark forest. Lozhnaya looked back at Boris, who looked around in fear.
Are you scared?
Boris was taken aback by the question.
What? Me? Afraid? Never.
Lozhnaya smiled, knowing full well the dwarf was scared.
Good. Because we're going into the most dangerous part of the forest.
Boris did his best to hold his composure. He was doing a bad job of it.
That's not a problem. No fear here.
The fairy's smile broadened.
Good.
The fairy flew on ahead. The fairy led Boris to a tree.
This tree houses the redemption from your father.
Boris looked into the hole in the tree where he found several books.
Books? How are books going to help me?
The fairy rolled its eyes.
It's what's in the book, Silly.
Boris did a lot of reading and blacksmithing and enduring his father's abuse. I regret having a son. Until he read the last book.
Finished.
He was ready for his revenge. Maxim walked into the forge to see his son sitting in a dark corner. Boris stared at his father darkly. Why are you not working, boy?
I'm done.
Are you now? Maxim looked around. I see no horseshoes, no axes, no armor. What exactly are you done with? Boris stood up, glaring at his father.
No.
Boris's hands glowed with an orange light.
You.
Maxim backed away from his son in horror. Boris, your hands. What is this?
Your demise.
Boris shot jets of flame from his hands. Burned Maxim alive. No! Ah! Boris met back up with the fairy.
The deed is done.
Boris nodded with a sinister smile on his face.
Yes. And with this power, I shall conquer the lands.
The fairy smiled a more sinister smile.
Yes.
About that. Boris watched in horror as the fairy started to change. The fairy's butterfly wings exploded into large bat-like wings. Their hands became red, and their nails became black talons. And their face contorted into a toothy maw. Once the change was finished, Boris found himself staring at an imp.
What are you? What is this?
The imp, laughed. You foolish mortal. You're nothing special. It's so easy for you to sell your souls for such trivialities. Boris backed away in horror.
Please don't kill me.
I don't want to kill you. Boris looked hopeful.
Really?
The imp's face grew into a large, sinister smile. No, I have much worse planned for you. Boris stared at the imp in confusion and terror.
What?
The imp waved its hand, firing a blast of red energy. That hit Boris, which changed his skin to bright red. He looked at himself in horror.
What did you do to me?
The imp disappeared in a puff of smoke. Boris dropped to his knees and wailed over his misfortune.
No!
Michail tucked young Yuri into his blanket.
And since he could not get his revenge on the imp, he took his rage out on anyone who crossed his path.
Yuri looked up at his father curiously.
Well, how come no one has tried to talk to him?
Michail smiled down at his son.
Oh, Yuri,
Michail gave his son a loving pat on the head.
do you know why the Hell Dwarf moans?
Yuri shook his head.
No, Papa.
Since the Hell Dwarf couldn't get his revenge on the imp, it filled him with endless anguish and rage. So those who hear his moan should take heed. For if he finds you, he will take his revenge on you.
Yuri shrugged.
He sounded more hurt than angry.
Michail shook his head.
Oh, my boy, You have a lot to learn about life.
Michail tossed his son's hair. Yuri was still curious, and a little offended, but figured his father was done talking about it. So he just smiled and said,
Good night, Papa.
I thought that was a very short story, but enjoyable. I was glad to add it to my...
It's not the full story.
I'm sorry?
Comrade, you're missing a lot of the story.
Oh. Would you care to enlighten me?
Well, someone needs to be setting you straight. Yuri laid in bed, thinking about the Hell Dwarf.
I need to find out more.
Galina was in the kitchen making breakfast. Galina brought in a plate for her son.
I've made eggs, your fave.
Galina came into Yuri's room with horrifying sight. Yuri was missing. Galina was filled with fear.
Oh my god, I hope he's okay.
Galina's fear turned to anger.
Once I find him, I'm tanning his hide.
Yuri had sneaked out his window. He took with him a lens on a stick that his father had gotten him from a gnome. This lens made it seem that things got bigger and made Yuri able to study them better. He was in the woods with his, I believe they call it a magnifying glass, staring at a bit of grass.
Oh, come on, there must be some clues.
Yuri was about to lose hope until he found something.
Speak. I found a footprint.
Upon finding the first footprint, he found another, and another, and another.
Didn't think Hell Dwarf would leave footprint. Interesting.
Yuri was excited to find the trail of footprints, until they ended at the start.
Darn it! Dead end.
Yuri looked around.
I would say he's metaphysical entity. Perhaps he floats. But why would something that floats make footprints? He must have crossed the stream some other way.
Yuri continued his investigation. He used his magnifying glass to look toward something across the stream. He smiled as he found another clue.
Another clue.
Yuri spotted a bit of something red on a tree across the stream.
I need a closer look.
Yuri investigated the stream.
Something tells me the creature doesn't float. So, how did it cross the stream?
Yuri found a few small stepping stones in the stream.
Aha!
Yuri balanced on one stepping stone, and he was struggling. Yuri was a bit nervous, but he was too close to solving the mystery. He had one more stone before he got to the other end of the stream.
Come on, Yuri. You can do this.
Yuri leaped from the stone. He flew through the air with a big rock of fear in his stomach. He saw the stepping fear in his stomach. He saw the stepping stone getting closer and closer. His foot touched down on the stone. He started to slip. The rush of adrenaline surged through Yuri. He, just barely, righted himself on the rock.
See, Yuri? No big deal.
Yuri continued his pursuit of the Hell Dwarf, only getting a little wet from the stream. He saw a few trees with a bit of red on them. At first, he thought they were blood, but upon closer inspection, he found it was some type of dye. Why would some demonic entity leave behind dye? Yuri's excitement grew. He was going to find the creature. Yuri's investigation brought him to a small cottage in the woods. He stared at it in awe.
Is this the creature's home?
As if to answer the young dwarf, a moan echoed through the woods from inside the cottage. Yuri shrugged.
Take that as a yes.
Most children would run from such a disembodied moan from hell. But Yuri wasn't most children. He needed a closer look at the cottage. Yuri sneaked his way towards a window in the cottage. He peered in to see the Hell Dwarf, who was moaning. Yuri was in so much awe that he didn't think about his volume.
Oh my!
The Hell Dwarf turned to look at Yuri.
Huh?
Yuri quickly ducked his head down. Yuri sat on the ground in silence.
Maybe he didn't see.
Yuri slowly stood up and looked through the window again, but the Hell Dwarf was missing.
Can I help you?
Yuri turned around to find himself facing the Hell Dwarf. Yuri found himself inside the cottage, staring across the table at the Hell Dwarf. The Hell Dwarf stared back at Yuri, as if to examine him. Then he broke the silence by saying,
Tea?
Yuri nodded, nervously.
Yes, please.
The Hell Dwarf poured Yuri some tea, with a deep sigh.
I'm guessing I'll know the story.
Yuri shrugged.
Why are they story?
The Hell Dwarf scoffed.
You are a clever boy.
Yuri smiled.
You are a rare breed, young one. I'm guessing you wish to hear real story?
I like to look into things.
Yuri shrugged again.
I have time.
Alright. I like you. I can tell you. When I was a child, my father was a tailor that specialized in gang fabrics. Me being far too curious boy, got into a lot of trouble. One day, my curiosity changed everything. My father had met a strange man.
Sir, I cannot be selling you cloth unless you have gold. How about a trade here, dear? What? Trade? What do you have for trade?
The stranger gave my father a sinister smile.
I got this special red dye here, dear. What?
My father stroked his beard as he thought.
Interesting.
I had been watching this trade from the back of father's shop. I should have been suspicious, but instead I was curious. My father kept all the dyes in the back in vats. I was investigating the new red dye the stranger had given us when I fell into it. My father walked in
Boris, are you... Boris!
to find me drowning the dye. My father had helped me out before I could drown, but the dye had infected me. It made my skin the red you see now. My father tried to scrub it off me, but to no avail. My father and I tried to have a normal life. But my father kept me in the back of his shop where I helped him dye clothes until the pain started. It would come and go. But it kept getting worse. My father took me to the local doctor, but he didn't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
We went to a cleric, but he didn't know what to do either.
I don't know what to do.
My pain grew worse, and with it my moans of pain. The village did not appreciate my moans of pain. They asked my father to ask me to leave. So my father and I went into the woods, and we built me this cabin.
Boris held his head in forlorn.
And this is where I've lived since my father's passing.
Yuri stared at Boris in wide-eyed amazement.
Wow, that's interesting. Wait, what about the fairy demon thing?
Boris scratched his head as he thought.
You know, I don't know how that got into the story.
Boris smiled at Yuri.
It's nice to get the story straight with someone.
Yuri nodded.
I can't wait to tell everyone.
Boris cringed.
No, actually, about that,
Yuri was taken aback.
You don't want me to tell?
I've just enjoyed my solitude so long, I'm fine with others stink away. I don't wish to harm anyone, but I am happy with the distance they keep.
What would you like me to tell them?
Boris rubbed his chin as he thought. Michail searched through the forest for Yuri. Yuri! Michail was getting worried until...
Father!
Michail saw Yuri running towards him. I'm so glad you're safe. Yuri ran into his father's arms. Father and son hugged for a while. You're grounded.
This new person told me that Yuri had spread a different tale. I asked how they knew. They merely smiled and walked away. I thought about following him, her, them, but decided against it. What's life without a bit of mystery?